Hello there, Ian Cathcart here. Flemington Hall Side Parish Church, thought for the day. Glad you're here. And if you weren't at the quiz last night, you missed yourself. Just saying, it was a good quiz. You also, the thing I'm saying is, I don't know if you're aware, but there's loads and loads of publishers who are going to kind of famous and not so famous Christian preachers and teachers and saying, can we have a book on the coronavirus? What's it like to be a Christian in the coronavirus? What's it like to be a Christian coping with pandemic and the lockdown? And could we have that book by next Tuesday? Is that okay? 100,000 words next week? In other words, it's a big publishing thing. And folks are, there's N.T. Wright, Tom Wright, and there's John Piper, and there's that guy Lennox, whose first name I've forgotten. He's a mathematician in Oxford. The point is, there's lots of folks. And it was actually Tim Keller, the guy who I told you about, he's written a book on the Psalms, written loads of books, but was recommending the one on the Psalms. He said, we should remember we do have, maybe not a book, a pamphlet already from a well-known Christian writer on what it is to deal with the pandemic. His name was Martin Luther, that's the only thing. It was written in 1527, so not quite up to date, but when you're tempted to think, not up to date at all, you realise the pandemic that he in particular is having to deal with is the Black Death. So I'm not slighting, the COVID-19 is killing a lot of people, but the Black Death obviously is usually estimated between 1/3 and 1/2 of the European population completely wiped out. So it's not a minor thing that Martin Luther's dealing with. He's dealing with the big one as far as pandemics are concerned. And the situation is one where it's 1527, so the Reformation has begun 1518, 1519, 1520. But now is the problem. If Martin Luther, given the fact it's 1527, if he dies now, this will be a sign from God above that God is judging Martin Luther and the Reformation generally. And so the kind of Protestant faith will be seen to be judged as bad. And if the more horrible and grisly and awful your death was, then clearly that was an indication that your theology was ski whiff. And as a consequence, the local, I think it was Duke John, he wanted to protect Martin Luther, keep him safe, but he also wanted to keep the Reformation safe. And what that meant was, don't let Martin Luther die, because that will mean the Reformation's judged. So he was trying to get everybody out to a place of safety and away from the plague. And as a consequence, he just literally moves them. They're based in Wittenberg, and he takes them away. And Martin Luther says, no, not going, staying here. And he then began to get criticism for staying. And he just writes in such a direct and practical fashion into this real problem that is causing great division. What happens is some Christians run away, and then when the plague goes away, they come back, and then there's Christians who have stayed and survived, and then there's division because, like, we stayed, we're the real Christians. You bunch of cowards, you ran away, you're not Christians at all. And so it became a real source of division and disunity. What we have here is Paul, I guess you would say, some people would say starting a bit negatively, but the fact is he's starting where, if you're dealing with a plague, you do have to start. To begin with, some people are of the firm opinion that one need not and should not run away from a deadly plague. Rather, since death is God's punishment, which he sends upon us for our sins, we must submit to God and with a true and firm faith patiently await our punishment. They look upon running away as an outright wrong and as a lack of belief in God. Others take the position that one may properly flee, particularly if one holds no public office. He's saying we start from a place where we're all sinners, we all fall short of the glory of God, and the punishment of sin is death. But it transpires he's not quite sure. No, that's not true. He's not convinced that that means we just stay. Since it's generally true of Christians that few are strong and many are weak, one simply cannot place the same burden upon everyone. It's an immensely practical and pastoral and pragmatic way of looking at it. I'm going to read it again. Since it's generally true of Christians that few are strong and many are weak, one simply cannot place the same burden upon everyone. Peter could walk upon the water because he was strong in faith. When he began to doubt and his faith weakened, he sank and almost drowned. When a strong man travels with a weak man, he must restrain himself so as not to walk at a speed proportionate to his strength, lest he set a killing pace for his weak companion. What he's saying is our people might get sick with this particular Black Death, but in their weakness, God still wants them to be cared for, helped. It is okay to flee the virus as long as people who need help get help. He talks about neighbours taking people in with the Black Death. But what he also says is, if the people who need to be cared for are being cared for, it's okay to leave. In fact, what he also says is, as well as neighbours taking people in, it would actually be quite good if we actually had specific buildings with doctors in them so they could just concentrate on looking after the sick. It's funny. It's almost 500 years ago. And he basically describes what hospitals should be doing and then says, as a whole community, we need to allow hospitals to specialise in doing that. We have to do it as a community. He basically describes the NHS without saying it. I know there have been lots of people who are very fulsome, rightly so, in applauding and praising and thanking the NHS. But it gave me this very clear recognition, hearing it 500 years previously from Martin Luther. The primary thing is not whether you stay or don't stay with the plague. The primary thing is that the neighbour, your neighbour, should be looked after. And if they are being looked after, then it's okay. You don't do anything by staying so that you can die. That the purpose of dying in that sense doesn't really amount to anything, because you could have saved your life by not being there. But the responsibility to ensure that people who are ill are looked after, that's absolute. I think if Martin Luther was here now, he would be saying the NHS is doing what it's supposed to be doing before God as a way of the whole country looking after specifically the people that are most needing the care. He does actually, just because in some countries it's how you pay and who pays for healthcare. There's a lot of countries where you pay for your own healthcare and sod everybody else. And it's just so direct. When it comes to a pandemic, Martin Luther says we actually do need to work corporately. You can do it just taking in your neighbour, but it's not very effective because The pandemic is just too big. It'd be much better if you actually had a building just for the doctors to look after the sick. 500 years ago. So I'm not just saying we should be thankful to the NHS. I'm saying the ethos that says the NHS or whatever, the fact that you get the health care that you need at the point where you need it, that's a Christian priority. We haven't always made all the various folks involved in the NHS the financial focus and necessity that we should. Whatever else comes out of this virus, we need to pay people in the NHS more. And by that I don't mean the folks who manage the NHS trusts. I literally mean the cleaners, the folks who cook the meals, the folks who do all the stuff that needs to get done. Because you don't leave your neighbours just to go on with it. It is an absolute Christian injunction. It is pivotal and the hallmark of Christian response that the weak are cared for by the strong. Give thanks for the NHS, certainly, but recognise there is virtually no culture throughout this world where hospitals didn't start out of a Christian imperative to make sure that you didn't just leave the weak to their own devices and death. You helped them because it was the Christian thing to do. You helped them because the strong help the weak. More from Martin tomorrow. Until then, go with God, because I know He goes with you.